يا سيد أنا رجعت على لبنان، أتمنى أنك ترجع كمان على لبنان.
قرار صادر من مجلس الجامعة تسمية حزب الله الإرهابي.
Good afternoon, you're watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim and these are today's top stories. Christians around the world mark Easter while in Lebanon, Maronite Patriarch Shadadai renews his call to elect a new president. The Syrian army vows to follow its victory against ISIS in the city of Palmyra with an advance against the extremists in the other strongholds. And Belgian prosecutors charged 3 men with terrorist offences over the bombings as the Islamic State vows to launch further attacks in Europe. Maronite Patriarch Shadadai says the absence of a president in Lebanon has made the chance of naturalizing refugees in the country easier, urging the international community to swiftly solve the regional crisis. On Friday, the Patriarch handed UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon a memo on the ongoing presidential vacuum during talks they held in Kirki. The memo included a demand that the international community assume its responsibilities towards Lebanon regarding the presidential deadlock. During the annual Easter Mass in Kirki, Rai said the failure to elect a president for nearly 2 years has weakened Lebanon's unity and its vital role on a regional and global level, but expressed hope in Lebanon's resilience. Meanwhile, Pope Francis spoke out against the rejection of migrants and refugees during his Easter message as Europe struggles with its biggest migration crisis since World War II. Addressing crowds gathered at St. Peter's Basilica, he said, quote, "The Easter message of the risen Christ invites us not to forget those men and women seeking a better future, an even more numerous throng of migrants and refugees fleeing from war, hunger, poverty, and social injustice. All too often, these brothers and sisters of ours meet along the way with death or, in any event, rejection by those who could offer them welcome and assistance." The pontiff referred to Syria's lengthy conflict with its sad wake of destruction, death, contempt for humanitarian law, stressing his hope for peace talks set to resume next month between the government and opposition forces. Tens of Christian worshippers attended a festive Easter Mass in Jerusalem's Church of Holy Sepulchre to celebrate Easter and Jesus' resurrection. Local Christians were joined by pilgrims from all over the world in a procession which was led by Roman Catholic Patriarch Fouad Toual. Toual led the faithful in prayer at the traditional site of Jesus' crucifixion, burial, and resurrection, which is considered one of Christianity's most sacred sites. Easter Sunday marks the culmination of Holy Week, which begins with Palm Sunday and commemorates the resurrection of Jesus 3 days after his death by crucifixion. Brussels Catholic worshippers are also marking Easter, remembering the victims of recent attacks in the Belgium capital. The country's chocolate makers are ready for the holiday despite a somber mood in the capital city. Nathan Frandino reports.
As Belgians mourn the victims of the attacks that struck Brussels this week, the city's renowned chocolatiers are working hard to bring a little holiday cheer to the somber capital. Here in the Sablon district, one chocolate shop paid tribute to the victims with crying birds. Owner Miriam Whittemer says she hopes her chocolates will help cheer up the city's residents as well as its visitors.
Indeed, I think that chocolate and Easter will bring a bit of sunlight. It feels good. So people are looking for enjoyment and to please others. Personally, that's what I want to remember.
The attacks killed at least 31 people and wounded over 300 others. It's hoped Belgium's world-famous treats can bring some warmth in what has been a dark week.
Lebanon's iconic Pigeon Rock, located along the Beirut coastline, was illuminated with Lebanese and Belgian flags last night in solidarity with the victims of this week's bomb attacks in Brussels. The lighting ceremony was organized by Beirut Governor Ziad Chbib and was attended by Belgian Ambassador to Lebanon, Alex Lenartz. It follows similar solidarity campaigns in major world cities in light of Tuesday's bombings claimed by ISIS that hit the airport and a metro station in the Belgian capital, Brussels, killing at least 31 people and wounding hundreds more. Chbib said he felt the city's principles of diversity and coexistence were the targets of the attacks. For his part, Lenartz expressed extreme sadness over the attacks, saying it was proof that terrorism can hit anywhere. army has vowed to follow its victory against ISIS in the city of Palmyra with an advance against the extremists in their other strongholds. In a statement carried by state media, the army pledged to regain full control over the cities and end the terrorist presence there. Syrian government forces backed by Russian air power have recaptured the ancient city of Palmyra from the Islamic State after days of intense fighting. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says gunfire could still be heard in the eastern part of the city this morning, but that the bulk of ISIL's forces had retreated. Palmyra, once known as the Bride of the Desert, used to attract tens of thousands of tourists a year before the conflict started in 2011. And coming up next, U.S. Democratic presidential contender Bernie Sanders wins nominating contests in Alaska and Washington. Stay with us. Welcome back. Suicide attackers from the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant have stormed one of the biggest army bases in Iraq and killed at least 18 soldiers. This is according to a military source. An Iraqi Defense Ministry spokesperson said 8 of them were killed by soldiers and 2 had managed to blow themselves up. Ain al-Assad was the second largest American air base in Iraq after the U.S.-led invasion. At least 300 U.S. military advisors and trainers remain in the base to support Iraqi troops. Army sources say the attackers were killed before they reached any facilities under the control of the U.S. military. A top court in the UAE has jailed 11 people for life after convicting them of extremist links and plotting terrorist attacks in the Gulf country. The official WAM news agency said the Federal Supreme Court in Abu Dhabi jailed 2 others for 15 years, 13 for 10 years, 6 for 3 years, and 2 for 5 years. 7 defendants were acquitted. The 41 defendants were accused of seeking to overthrow the government to set up an ISIS group-style caliphate in the UAE. The Khaleej Times newspaper says the defendants were also found guilty of endangering the safety and security of the country and the lives of individuals, including the leadership and its symbols, with the intention to cause damage to state and private infrastructure. Other charges included possessing firearms and ammunition with the intention of committing attacks, as well as contacting and raising funds for ISIS and al-Qaeda's Syria-affiliate Nusra Front. Authorities had reported their arrest on August 2nd, and their trial began on August the 24th. The Belgian Crisis Center says the death toll from the March 22nd attacks on Brussels airport and the metro system has been revised down to 28. Belgian prosecutors have charged 3 men with terrorist offenses over the bombings, and Italian police have arrested an Algerian suspected of having produced false documents from militants connected with the attacks. With the investigation now spanning several countries and increasing signs of links to the Paris attacks in November, Belgian authorities called off a planned march against fear today in the jittery capital to relieve pressure on the police. But a video recently released by ISIL shows a fighter vowing further attacks in Europe. Austria's interior minister has called for tougher measures to protect the EU's border from returning extremist fighters. Interior Minister Joanna Michel-Leitner said, "We know that more than 5,000 people traveled to Syria and Iraq to be trained or even to fight, so it's more pressing than ever that EU citizens be systematically controlled at the outside borders in the future." Disagreement over immigration and border protection has divided the European bloc, as suicide bombings in Brussels and attacks in Paris last November have heightened security concerns amidst a wave of incoming refugees. Austria has come under fire for its tough immigration stance. Vienna said it will introduce tougher checks at its borders with Italy and has urged the EU to send soldiers to Greece to police the bloc's frontiers. Residents in the Belgian capital of Brussels have divided opinion about whether the Schengen Agreement should be changed in order to tighten security following the recent events.
Yes, I think so.
Why?
Because it's impossible to let all the people
What we have to do is keep Schengen, but do more border control on the limits of Europe.
It's not enough to change the whole direction of what's going on. It's not enough. I mean, it's not that important. Of course, it is scary, of course.
U.S. Democratic presidential contender Bernie Sanders has won nominating contests in Alaska and Washington. chipping away at frontrunner Hillary Clinton's lead in the race to pick the party's candidate for the White House. Sanders' wins on Saturday underscored Clinton's vulnerabilities within her own party, particularly with young voters and liberal activists who have been inspired by her rival's left-of-center message. The two Democrats were also competing in Hawaii's caucuses. Sanders cast his performance as part of a Western comeback, saying he expects to close the delegate gap with Clinton as the contest moves to the more liberal northeastern states, including her home state of New York. He also said his campaign was increasing its outreach to superdelegates, the party insiders who can pick either candidate and are overwhelmingly with Clinton. A video released by North Korea has depicted a nuclear attack on Washington as an angry Pyongyang continued to hit out against joint military drills between South Korea and the United States. The 4-minute state media video titled Last Chance showed a digitally created scene of a missile being fired from a North Korean submarine and wiping out the U.S. Capitol. Pyongyang, which says the military drills are a dress rehearsal for an invasion, was angered when South Korean media reported that the exercises included training for a decapitation strike on the North's top leader. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un warned his military was prepared to attack Seoul's presidential palace unless South Korean President Park Geun-hye apologized for treason and executed officials Pyongyang accuses of planning to attack it. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a recap of our top stories. Christians around the world mark Easter, while in Lebanon, Maronite Patriarch Shaddai renews his call to elect a new head of state. The Syrian army vows to follow its victory against ISIS in the city of Palmyra, with an advance against the extremists in their other strongholds. And Belgian prosecutors charged 3 men with terrorist offenses over the bombings as the Islamic State vows to launch further attacks in Europe. Those are your top stories for this Sunday. I'm Linda Tamim, wishing everyone celebrating a very happy Easter.
بقول له يا سيد أنا رجعت على لبنان، أتمنى إنك ترجع كمان على لبنان.